¿Cómo están? This is our third day and last day at Sundance Film Festival. Bienvenidos de nuevo to the Latinx House. I am Olga Segura. I'm one of the co-founders of the Latinx House, along my sisters Monica Ramirez and Alex Martinez Kondraki. We're so glad that you're here for a special, intimate networking event for the Latinx community. Thanks to our friends at the Google Media and Entertainment team for making this happen. Actually, I think this is such an important moment and conversation because we know that our Latinx community is not a monolith. The Latinx community represents more than 20 different countries. Some of us speak Spanish, some of us don't. And those who do may speak it differently. We're now going to welcome a conversation on Latinx identities and how to find the audience for the next story that filmmakers and creators want to tell. I want to welcome our partner at Google, but I really want to give them a shout out for, helping us to build this special place. It's so important to have partnerships like the ones that we have with you guys, because this is a very expensive place. So I keep saying it, but it is very expensive. So please enjoy it, eat the food, have the drinks, drink a lot of water, because altitude can be dangerous, but please enjoy it. We made it with a lot of love. So now I want to welcome the head of media entertainment and multicultural content partnerships at Google, Juanjo Duran. No te vas a caer.
Thank you so much, and I would love to invite the rest of the panelists while I introduce myself. You can come on. But I'll talk a little bit more about what we are doing, why we are here, and myself and the rest. But before I begin with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Latinx House. Thank you, Olga, Monica, and the rest of the staff. We truly feel like we are in tu casa. You open the doors. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to be here today. As Olga mentioned, I lead traditional media content partnerships and multicultural for Google. And you would be thinking why we're here. What's the role that we're playing? And I believe we play a very instrumental role, whether it's discovering and surfacing that content and all the way into really watching that content. The first thing that you do whenever somebody, a friend tells you about a piece of content or an actress or a director, you Google it. So we tend to know a lot about you as a user, and we marry those things with the other piece, which is where the networks, the streaming services, the linear channels are having this type of content. You as a user, you don't need to really know where this specific content lives and who has the rights for wherever. That's our job, to make it easy. And I feel very proud to share with you that we have a dedicated team at Google on making this. Dami leads that on my team. There he is. Thank you so much, Dami, for making this partnership possible. And as I was saying, we play the final piece in this whole journey. And there's a lot of things that we need to do in terms of representation. But the reality is that we cannot do it alone. We need all the different pieces of the ecosystem. And that's the reason why I'm so excited about the panel that we have today, because we're gonna be hearing from all those different pieces, and we're gonna be having an amazing conversation. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I'll leave some time at the end to get some questions, but I'll let our amazing panelists introduce yourselves.
Is this a good time? Hi, I'm Mishel Prada, and I'm an actor. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Yvette Urbina. I'm the VP of Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Warner Brothers Discovery for creative and production. Happy to be here with you all.
Behind you. No? Okay, well, hi, thanks for the invitation. I'm Christopher. I'm the director of SORCERY, a film that is premiering this year at Sundance. So, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Super excited. Thank you for being here. The first question that I would love to hear from you is, how do you feel about the state of the representation of the Latinx community right now in our industry? And what perhaps you're doing individually in your own segment to advance in that element? So whomever wants to go first.
Oh no. So it's like, how do I feel about and it sucks. Like, I think that's pretty clear. I mean, I'm sure there's a much more elegant way of putting it, but yeah, I think there's work to be done. There's opportunities that I think we're being called to step into, and I know a big part of my personal journey is moving from being happy to be in the room to feeling deserving to be there, and it's been something that I've been trying to continue going. But yeah, I think we're obviously seeing huge gaps and hopefully opportunities that we will continue to keep showing up for.
Well, I would just say, first of all, I've been at this house for a few days, and the fact that it exists and has been as crowded as it has been in my time here is so impressive and frankly moving. And I also, just as somebody who has been in the business more years than I care to admit to, I would say that it's really like a step in the right direction, but there is always room for improvement, and admittedly my job wouldn't exist if there wasn't. I would say, in terms of my job, and in terms of the things that are happening at my company, I would say that I'm proud of some of the steps that are happening and the things that are happening. And just speaking about representation, when I look at like a show that premiered a little over a week ago now, and The Last of Us, and I look at Pedro Pascal as the lead of a show where he's great, yes, for that. He's playing the lead of a video game show, a show about the biggest video game probably, right, that launched in the last however many years, and he is playing himself Latino, and he is Latino, Latinx, and he is, I mean, that is, like, he's not a nautical, he's not a thief, he is the lead of this video game character, and that is a huge step in representation, I would argue, on an HBO production. Incredibly proud of that, and it was, by the way, and it's huge for us. I would also say that we have a movie coming out, Blue Beetle, we can all be excited about that too. And with a director who is Puertorriqueño, everybody knows,
Miguel Soto.
Angel Miguel Soto, yes. Cholo Maridueña is a local boy who was in Cobra Kai, if you don't know him. I say local because I'm from Los Angeles. So we're really, really excited about that, incredible representation in that. So in terms of features, and then we have a show coming out that is True Detective Night Country, that is led by one Isa Lopez. And so if you don't know, and that's actually a show with incredible indigenous representation as well. So I think in Callie Reese, who is the lead. So I'm excited. I'm excited about the potential, where we're going. And again, there is so much room for more representation. But I think what's great is that we're seeing shows that are by and for Latinx, our people, but they're also not just about the traditional things that we've seen in the past. You're telling a broader range of stories, and I think that's great.
Well, from my side, I'm as a filmmaker, in a way, I think the idea of representation and the building of stereotypes is a challenge usually. Like how to go beyond that in a way, and for me, I can see the efforts in that way and in the industry, and I think it's important to take it seriously. Basically, because when you build a character, thinking in a more creative way. Basically, the only way to go beyond stereotypes is about complexity. It's about understanding complexities and understanding how deep can a character go. And sometimes I think the history of cinema, I'm thinking about in cinema in particular, is complicated in a way. It's so complicated because it has, in a way, how would you say inertia? How do you say inertia?
Momentum.
Yeah, that in terms of narratives, in terms of topics, in terms of what are we telling, because it's an industry and of course there's something that has to be proved and again, try again the same thing. And I think we're in a moment, of course, where a lot of content is being produced because of the streaming, because of the production content. I think we're in an interesting moment of production, but I think this moment of production has to be like in the same level in terms of the complexities of the character, of the topics, of the agenda of what we're doing. So I don't know, and for me at least, in a more creative way, the only way to do that is to open the space to people that can bring visions from other places, and I think that's a must in a way, and doing research. I think research is something that sometimes is so like okay, we do research and then we go to pre-production, writing, whatever. But if you take research seriously, in terms of making in the place, in the territory, talking, making field work. I have a background in anthropology, and so I think when you can feel when a program or a show has this deepness in terms of research, and I think that's a good way to go beyond these stereotypes that I think has been for so long. All over the cinema industry.
It's at the end of the day, it's the stories that matter, right? How important they are, and that's something that we are trying to break that cycle. When you get into search and discovery, you can go deep in this rabbit hole and end up in the same thing and not get this wide vision of what's around. And I think the reality is that you don't need to be Korean to enjoy Squid Games, or you don't need to be Asian to enjoy La Casa de Papel or things like that. And we've seen more and more of that. And what we're trying to do is precisely break that cycle. But definitely agree with all of you. I think I feel excited myself. I feel that there's some momentum going on, for sure. Never in my wildest dreams I would have imagined that a game that I love as a growing up and as a gamer would end up with an amazing show and a Latin character that at the end of the day is not about a Latin story. It's about really making it normal, making that representation. Yvette, you told us about that great show, but we also know that there's this other momentum in terms of streaming services and an array of places where you can connect and watch. And as I mentioned, we're trying to make it easy for the user. But how much do you think that helps overall to advance in the Latinx overall content industry, or perhaps gets you deeper into those rabbit holes that I was mentioning?
It's funny, we were talking about this before we started. So, well, first of all, I think that the proliferation of content, of course, creates opportunities, more opportunities for everyone. I think that it certainly can create a rabbit hole if you just go down one path, but I would say, number one, there's more opportunities for everyone. There are always opportunities for more writers, more directors, more talent for everyone. I would also say, though, it's funny we talked about this. I think that there are great opportunities. Our stories are everyone's stories. I believe that our stories are everyone's stories. It's not about one story can only apply to one segment or one person or one type of person. It's about who's telling that story and how are they being allowed to tell that story. I really believe that. And it's about making sure that there's specificity in that type of storytelling. I mean, I would just only use this example in Father of the Bride, which we read, which if you saw it this past year on the streamer, like I think there was so much, so much specificity in the way that was retold, that story, using the sort of the Cuban and the Mexican narrative. Really allowed them to tell that story in a new and different way. And by the way, I don't think it's about remaking every story, but it's about saying like, oh, you like a romantic comedy? What's your version of the romantic comedy? Because we all like them, right? Like I don't think there's any denying that every community enjoys a romantic comedy, but it's about specificity in the storytelling and allowing somebody their point of view and their ability to tell it. And by the way, having so many different channels and the streamer and the studio and the film studio, we have a proliferation of places that story can be sold and told, certainly. I think that is what just gives so many opportunities. If you go to Warner Brothers and sell something, they might say like, oh, it's not right even for the platform, but we could take it somewhere else and sell it, right? Like, let's go elsewhere. And I think that's what's really great. Like, I've used the example of Keep Breathing, which we sold this year, but it went to Netflix. Like, that's fine. Like, it's still a Warner Brothers property, but it did incredibly well, right? And it was all Latino cast. I think that's what's amazing about being at a platform that has such a range of opportunity.
Totally agree. Mishel, you've had so many amazing projects. I would love if you can share a little bit about some of the projects that you had, but also your experience as a Latina and the responsibility that sometimes you have to carry with you, and how to break that cycle and how to be authentic and all of that.
Yeah, I had this, I didn't realize, I mean, I kind of realized it at the time. I went from really not being able to book, like get an agent, or even, because everybody already had one ethnically ambiguous person on their roster, to having my pick of agents after I booked Vida, and it was a quick turnaround. And I'm so grateful that the first show that I was ever on was a full Latinx writers room, like, in front of the camera and behind the camera. It was so many women and people of color. So I kind of came into it thinking that that's just the way things were. So I didn't know until I worked on other stuff where I'm like, oh, this is what you guys have been dealing with. And I kind of like that. So then moving into the last project that I just wrapped, which was John Wick the Continental, where I was, comes out in September, where, it was a very diverse cast, but I was the only Latina. And we were in Budapest. We were in Europe on top of it. It wasn't even like LA, where, so it was a very white place where you're walking down the street and people stare at you. And I'm like, I don't feel like I look that different, but I did. And, really being able to kind of see that realm and understanding that there was a moment where that character wasn't written for a Latina, they just decided to make her Latina, and then getting the scripts and being like, she wouldn't do this. Like, she's, a woman in the 70s during like a very specific time, and being able to then go to the showrunner and being able to be like, I actually have value in helping you craft this script that's going to give us the nuances that you're not able to do, and less in a way of like shaming the person, being like, oh, I got you. Like, I can put the cafetero in her, apartment, and all the rosary and all the little things, and then also kind of have that ability to craft that. And part of it too was just like, I felt like with Vida, it all happened so quickly, and I felt very crushed with this idea of like, oh my gosh, I have to represent our people, and I don't want to do it wrong, and how do I not get canceled every time I'm on a panel, or say the wrong thing, and realizing that my job really isn't to represent all of us, it's to represent my experience. And if you hear yourself in that experience, awesome, take what works and leave what doesn't, because it might not. And releasing myself into being able to then be an artist, and realizing that there's a moment like me being on that screen is a revolutionary political act on its own. And my responsibility is to create the best work that I'm capable of doing and giving myself that ability to fall into the crevices and the nuances of being a fully fleshed human being, which I feel like we're hearing is like, that's so revolutionary. We get to have emotions and feelings and character arcs just like everybody else, but really allowing myself to feel that and realizing that my responsibility first is to the art and to the craft, and the better that I'm capable of telling these fully fleshed out stories and creating these characters, the better it will be for all of us, because then I'm not just being a Latina or being, you know, a woman, which is a Latina, but knowing that that's a part of me, but it's not the only most interesting part of me. And allowing myself that ability to do that, and then, you know, getting to play in that space. And then, you know, you put your hat on when you realize the times that you need to, you know, fight the good fight and what you're doing, and also advocating, you know, for myself, but for those around me. I know that, you know, more than once, like when I've been on set with, you know, an African American actress, realizing that I'm like, oh wow, like the hair is always like such an issue, and being like, why is this? And having it being like, we're gonna be there for each other, and being like, I'm not gonna only like let you advocate because that's your thing. It's being like, no, what's going on with the hair? Why is this an issue? And being able to really create a community within us as actors and as people that are, this table wasn't built for us. Like, and that's fine, but you know, nothing, the status quo has been built to keep us out. It wasn't built for us. We are dangerous. The more we come together and allow ourselves to be really good and create beautiful stories and join together and do that. So I think that's been a bit of like my journey from a show like Vida to then, you know, a John Wick thing. And I also got stronger because I trained for 3 months, so now I can like actually beat people up.
And really be dangerous.
That's amazing. I think at the end of the day, is what we were talking, right? You need to have that authenticity. The audience is gonna, like sharks, they're gonna smell that, and they either are gonna reject it or engage deeply with it. Christopher, first of all, congratulations on your movie. Tell us a little bit. You were telling me before we came up here about your process. You were shooting in Chile. You were editing in Mexico. But tell us about the whole process of putting together a film. And also, I would love to see if you can lean to what Mishel was saying. Do you feel a weight of responsibility as being Latino when you're creating in that whole process?
Okay. Well, the process, at least in Chile and a lot of countries in Latin America, usually is really different from how it works the industry here in the US. Usually we need to work in co-productions, you know, and these co-productions usually are from one country, from Europe, for example, to get public funds from I don't know, from Germany, from I don't know, from France, usually, and also a partnership with another kind of country in Latin America. In this case was Mexico through Pimienta Films, that it's an incredible production company of Nicolas Celis, and of course that was a beautiful opportunity also because this film that is based in a real event that happened in the 19th century in Chiloé. It's really local. You know, it's really local in terms of the story. It's a trial, prosecution of the modern state against indigenous communities and sorcery as resistance in that area. It's like a kind of a story that's so particular, but you are pushed to work with people, for example, from Mexico, from Germany. And in terms of Mexico, it was a beautiful experience because I think Mexico has such an experience in terms of filmmaking, you know, in terms of the talent that is there, and the editor, and the music, and the sound design, and the color, everything is from Mexico. And I think that kind of things also make it more universal, at least in terms of how we approach it, and also because we have partnerships in Europe and wherever. So, yeah, usually when we make films there, everything is about public funds. Everything now it's kind of changing because of the streaming. There are some films that are completely produced by the streamer, so in a way it's in a moment that's a tricky moment. But the tradition has been like via several years, like collecting funds from different states and finally put them together to premiere in a place like this. And you know, for me, it's I don't know. It's been interesting because I don't look like a Latino in a way. You know, as the tradition, I don't know. My name is Christopher Murray. No one understands that I'm Latino. You know, I was living in the UK and people were so confused. They thought I had a problem in talking, you know, because of the accent. And so it's kind of interesting for me also, because I come from a privileged place, you know, from a privileged family. I'm white in that place, that it's completely different from colleagues from mine that are more part of local communities, indigenous communities. It's cruel, but it's true what's happening, and I'm completely conscious about it. And the thing is, for me also, usually I'm not so interested in making films about my own history, because I find it a little bit boring, my own history, but I like to go to find stories, to find places, to find topics, because for me at least filmmaking is about opening and discovering worlds that is not my world. And this of course is kind of a problematic thing sometimes, because are you the one to tell that story and these kind of things? And I think that's so interesting to be talking about this kind of things. Who is the person to talk about this? What is going to be the method or the methodology to make this film so it's authentic? Who's going to cast it? And I think all the production companies, at least in Chile, are kind of thinking about this. And that's something new in a way. That's something new. Usually, even in Chile, there are a lot of stereotypes about poverty, about the representation of poverty, indigenous, about it's kind of, even the high class, you know, everything's kind of really static. And now we're a moment when I think the industry is kind of also asking for something more complex. And I think that important thing is that has to be made in an honest way, you know, and not in terms of filling a quota. I don't know how you say that in English, you know. But yeah, okay, we need this because it's, you know, I think that's so delicate. So it's you want to make that, it's because you're really interested in that, because the topic makes sense, because it's organic, because and that's a thing, a challenge. I think it's a challenge, and we're at a moment when this challenge is being driven, and I don't know. Me, for as a creator, is something that I'm thinking all the time. You know, how to be honest in what I made and authentic. That I think that the audience also is so kind of sensible about these topics now.
So important. That's so important. At the end of the day, that's what makes stories so unique and they transcend beyond different demographics. Yvette, you were telling me a story in the back before about, we have this saying in Mexico that in order to just order to whip something, you need to know how to whip. Para poder mandar necesitas saber barrer. So you told me about the fact that you went all the way and created a film and learned how to do all of those things to have a sense of all the different pieces that you need to know in your role, which is filling that gap in between the importance of representation and at the end of the day that content that lives in production. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Oh yeah, so I'm very kind of y'all to invite me, because for me, filmmaking is not really my specialty. I made one movie I was a producer on a movie about more than 10 years ago that did premiere not here at South by Southwest, and it's a movie that I have a co-producer title on, probably a few other titles on, because I did all the jobs on the movie, including driving transpo. The movie was made for like $700,000. It did sell to IFC. You could find it somewhere. And I did it was between jobs, and I took the job because I had been a network executive for a long time. And I felt like as a network executive in television, you just tell people what do. I probably shouldn't say that. But I, I did. I felt like I was giving notes a lot, and it was mostly just yeah, you're just giving notes. You're just telling people what to do, and they just do it, and that was it. And I I didn't understand what the jobs really were that I was telling people what to do, right? I didn't understand what they did. And I didn't understand the budget, and I didn't understand many of the roles. So I thought like it was time, if I was going to keep going in this business, to understand what their jobs were. And if I was going to ask people to do something, then I was going to understand it first. So I went out and I did this movie, and I really did. And I will never forget it when they said to me that I had to order a scissor lift because ours had broken. And I was like, oh no, this is a disaster, because I don't know what a scissor lift is. It's in the middle of the desert. And I had to thank God there was Google then, because I did Google it, and I was like, oh, I better get on the phone to somebody and get us a scissor lift out here. But now I know, and I know all the jobs, and I do think it's important. I do think it's important to understand. I know I will never, when I went back to work, I went to work in a sales role, at a studio. I was in a deal. And I really did feel so much better now when I walk onto a set. Like, I did understand the importance of, if I was giving a note, I understood what the note might do, right? Like, if I gave a note, it might unravel somebody's script. It might add $1 million to something. It might add an entire week of production. And I had a better sense before I ever did something what that meant. Or I could explain it to my boss, what their note might mean. They might not care, but at least I knew that I had done my due diligence. And I feel that in terms of representation, I do think it matters, because I'm able to look at a budget and say, we need to do better here, right? Because we can do better here. We can add in people to make this a more inclusive production, to make this a more inclusive set. Like, how can we do better to make this something that we're proud of? And I feel like it's really important to understand that. And for me, I'm really happy to have had that lesson many, many years ago. But I do think it's really I take that personally, as somebody who is Mexican American, I take that something that I put the onus on myself as part of this community to own that, and know that if I want to see more inclusion in these spaces, that I have to own that. If I'm going to help this community, I have to help by starting with me and understanding what are the jobs, how do I help people, and so yes, that is something I did a long time ago.
That's amazing, and thank you for having that empathy. I think it's so important and really shows up. Mishel, can you expand a little bit on what Yvette was saying? You were telling us the story about that, how you've learned about the different parts of the production and the lights and all of that, and utilize that to do a better job on your unique role.
I think kind of maybe piggybacking a little bit what you said, I think sometimes also realizing that inclusion isn't just a handout, it actually makes your story better. Having different voices, it's not hey, we need to have inclusion, please, it's just no, your story is going to be better the more that you're willing to listen to each other, the same way that your life is better, the more we're willing to listen to each other. And I think that, yes, I think that was, we were discussing with being in Budapest shooting John Wick, there was a lot of understanding of, I could have gone up to the showrunner and the writer and been this is inappropriate, you guys don't understand what's happening or whatever, or being hey, I get that maybe it's a pandemic, there's not ability to have this writer's room or this or this or this. I'm down to take a crack at figuring out some stuff, because I know that your story will be better when you have a fully fleshed out Latina character, and not just somebody that's just gets mad and spicy and wags her finger and shakes her hips. And thankfully having a showrunner and that was being yes, thank you, please, let's do this, let's work on this, and really understanding the power that has. And I think also me using the time, because I was away from everybody for so long, I didn't realize how halfway through I was get me out of here. But I got to connect with the white side of my gene pool in Europe. And being able to also use that time, I got to work with Albert Hughes, who is, you know, an incredible director, one of the first Black directors to go to Cannes, and he let me shadow almost the entire set. And, you know, Vida was more kind of an indie, critically acclaimed thing. You know, the John White Continental was well over $100 million project, and that's a whole other experience. So taking those opportunities when they are there, and him being like, yes, come on. You know, was learning lighting and learning, you know, sitting with the scripty and realizing that not only did it make me a better actor, but using that time as opposed to just sitting there and, you know, not doing anything that felt like fulfilling in my spirit, being like, oh, now I feel like I can produce things. And I got access to a film school that I could have never afforded growing up. So being able to not only wait for the opportunities to be handed to you, but to really show up, show up for those opportunities for yourself, and also know that you're adding value to that. It's not just like, hey, I need this, can I get this? It's more like, hey, I need this, and by giving this to me, I'm also adding value to your project, and I'm making sure that our allegiance is also to the art itself, and all of us succeed when we're really bowing down at the throne of art, because we get to have fully fleshed out characters, we get to tell stories that not only create a representation on the outside, but it connects us to what's on the inside, because, you know, most of us want the same things. So that was a big part of that experience that I'm very grateful that we are at a time where, you know, maybe I'm a little atrevida and I showed up and was like, hey, can I shadow? But being able to do that and being in a space where it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, and getting that experience and making those opportunities for ourselves.
I love it. Thanks for sharing. And I think please. I think we're almost out of time. And before we wrap it up, I want to make sure that we open it up for you guys to see if you have any questions at the end of the day. It should be a conversation. I feel like we can stay here for a couple of hours where I'm getting hungry. A lot of that great smell coming out. So
as a filmmaker out of New York City, there is a large population that is marginalized. Like you stated, you know, you're from a privileged background. So in order for you to actually get something done, you more than likely have to do research, as you stated. So now, my question to you guys is, how? Because our focal point that we're on right now is focusing how can people that are marginalized get into this business? You know, so now, with someone like me, it took me approximately 12 years to get a film out in theaters. You know, now it's on Tubi. So now I'm in a position to say, okay, you know what? You grew up in the ghetto. You have no opportunity. You don't know this type of person. You don't have her number. You can't get to her or you for that matter. So I'm in the lane where it's like, okay, you know what? You come along. But I'm not just telling Shakim to come along. I'm telling Jose he could come along because that's how we grow up in New York City. We grow up with Latin people next to us. We are actually brothers. You can't tell a black story without having a Latin in it. You can't tell a Latin story without having a black person in it. Not in New York City. Hip-hop started with blacks, Latin, and groups together. But now, as I look past New York City, I'm not seeing those type of stories like that. I'm seeing Latin stories. I'm seeing black stories. To me, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, hold up. We are one and two. We have the same struggles. We have the same marginalization that's taking place in the entire country. So how are you guys, and what steps are you guys taking to focus on those people that don't have the opportunity, don't have the voice, don't have the stage, the phone numbers, the emails, or any other thing to get in this business, but everybody on here is telling their stories without being capable of telling their backstories. And that is why we have these stereotypes. Because you talk about the bad guy, but you never understood why the bad guy became the bad guy. You see, that is the problem. This is what's going on. And it continue to go on today. So until you guys could actually gap that space
and be able to reach out to someone like my man Jose from Castle Hill Projects and say, hey, Jose, how did you become this individual? How did you become this bad guy? And he can tell you about his mama, his sister, the drugs, the this, the that, and everything. You can tell that backstory to make him human without you just having him walk into the store, shoot somebody, take a couple of dollars, drink a bottle of beer, and walk off like it's nothing. So how are you guys gathering that? That's what I want to know.
I can.
No, please go ahead.
First of all, congrats, because you beat the odds in being able to stick it out for 12 years because a lot of people can't. And seriously, and I can say, I've been there. Like, I went to high school, like, I didn't even realize what trauma was, where they're like, oh, you saw someone get shot in your high school? Like, you know that you're probably still dealing with PTSD. And I'm like, or like, you know, where you're like, now being able to float between both worlds, you know, and being at a premiere and being like, my brother's in jail, you know, and knowing that when I told my mom I wanted to act, she was like, oh, you can be a reporter for Univision, because that was the only way that she saw someone like me being able to be. And I was like, no, I want to be an actor. I don't want to be a reporter. And being told when I came to LA, you know, everybody knows somebody. And to be able to kind of stick it out, you got to have a little family money back there to kind of, you know, and I didn't have that. I think I think delusion probably had a lot to do with it, and being very naive, but I know that that's been a big part of also me really crafting the story and being like, you get survivor's guilt, right? You're like, why me and not my, people in my family, and being the jump and being like, I stuck that out. And I think a lot of it is just, I know a big part for me was being able to be like, I'm not ashamed of where I was from, because I didn't realize I was doing this, but I just kind of wouldn't bring it up because I could float between both worlds and I could present in a certain way, and being able to be like, no, my voice is important. Where I'm from and where my family is, like, that's important. And I felt very inspired by, like, when we create those stories, like Moonlight. Like, I know that diner. Like, I know that beach that they are on, because that was the beach I had the parking, so everybody would either smoke some weed or like have their first makeout sessions ever. And knowing that that's what that power was, because I know for me, even though it wasn't a Latinx story, it was still a Miami story, and it was a Miami I knew. And realizing like, oh damn, like my story matters and it's important. And I think that that's what I said at the beginning with representation, is being like, I'm really that working of not being grateful to be at the table, being like, I deserve to be here and you need me. And opening that door for as far as you can for you, but also kicking up the back door and reaching as far back as you can to bring up as many people as you. And Nikki is sitting right here.
That's what I was gonna say, is that honestly this conversation is so important, and the Noche's conversation yesterday was so important. But so Mishel, I come from nothing, like super horrible part, the whole thing. And I've fought my way to get into this business, got a scholarship by the grace of God to go to the American Film Institute, which is one of the greatest film programs. But Mishel saw me when I reached out to her. She was already in so many projects, and I asked her, can you be in my thesis film? She said, first off, nobody even asked me this stuff because they think it's going to be a no, right? She's with UTA, she's with like all the biggest agencies. And I was like, no, you have to do this movie because this story needs to be told. And also, I don't fucking know anybody in LA. I don't know anybody, And she was like, this is why I want to be in your film, because just my presence being in that film is going to introduce you to the people that you need to meet. And Christopher was talking yesterday on his panel, like his whole film is about the indigenous community in Chile. And he said that he went to that island and included all the locals in the research. So I think being in this environment for you to connect with me, to connect with Mishel, to connect with anyone here, I think is like, because I'm so in agreement with what you said about the Black and the Latino thing, and I'm just like, let's merge and build together. but it is hard, but it is a persistence, and it is about meeting the right people and continuing to fight. But like, I would love to connect with you, and you know, I think don't be afraid, because I just go up to people too. I'm like, hi, and you could tell when they don't want to talk to you, and I'm like, okay, bye. I'll go up to the next person, you know. But like, someone like her is so. They're out there. There are people that are starting to bring people up, and even though it hasn't happened in the past or something, like, I don't think that we should let that jade us and continue to just be open to receive.
Yeah, I was just going to tell, thanks for your comment, and I think it's important. It was interesting because I come from a place where usually these kind of things are about also in terms of public policies. You know, not only in terms of the industry, but also in terms of the state and how the state promotes certain cultural process. And that's part of a cultural fund for promoting voices. Of course, at least in Chile, it's not only about the industry or the head or an executive, but it's also about a political statement of a country that makes a decision. I work in academia. I'm a teacher in a university there. And it's so important for us, of course, in terms of having a diversity in the film school. You know, free university in some cases, and part also political parties or whatever, trying to push that thing. With our new president, whether we have kind of the same age I am, there's a new energy, at least in our country, trying to not only to open, in this case, film schools in terms of diversity, but also to have specific criteria in terms of who is going to get the public funds to make a film. And that's a political thing, but in terms in taking decision of putting new voices there. Because of course, at least in Chile, when there were no public funds, and there was everything about families that had money, and they have a kid that wanted to make films, and they put the money on, I think you can understand that kind of things. That thing, at least at the last 20 years or 15 years, because of a public policy and politics in terms of that thing, have changed a little bit. And we have new voices that are more interesting than just like the elite of the country that make film, because making film is expensive. And who is going to afford it? So I think it's important not to afford it only in terms of the industry, but also in terms of the film schools, and also in terms of the funds that the state is going to push, as in Europe, and it sometimes works also.
Thank you. No, totally agree. I think I can share my approach on a tech company. The reality is that in what we do, there are not a lot of Latinos. So there are several steps that I've learned. One is get closer to the people that get it. Even though they might not be Latinos or they might not be Black Americans, they get it. They get about the importance of moving further. Secondly, you need to educate yourself. You need to understand that there's no way that you can advance and know everything about a demographic that you don't belong to. For instance, we have a strategy about Black Americans. We are expanding globally our strategy. There's no way that we can adapt what we have, because being Black in Brazil or in the UK or somewhere else, it's completely different. So what I do personally, I get surrounded by people that know about the difference and lead between the convergence into tech and content. And then at the end of the day, it's making the case. At our company, it's showcasing why it's important. And the beauty of it, and I can share it with you all, is that we are extremely important, not only because of DEI, because we represent an amazing business. So that's what we do. And the last part is get closer to the community. That's the reason why we're here. That's the reason we are in different places, to know more, to understand more, and then for me to go back and challenge my staff and say, hey, we are doing great in this approach, but we're missing X, Y, and Z. Can we get further into that piece? So I think there's a lot of different things that still need to be done. But totally agree that there's a gap. And it's up to us that we are in these places to continue to get educated, get open, and push to move forward. I don't know if by any chance we have more time. You have another question?
Can I also just say there are also, like, Yes, we have a lot of great programs. We have 150 is one of our programs at WBD. I just want to acknowledge that because my head 150 is here, Axel Caballero, who's there. And it's a great artist first program that we have, 150.com spelled out, if you don't know that. But also, I just want to say that, first of all, there's this amazing Latinx House here, but last night there was an amazing multicultural panel and party, and where the houses came together. Because we understand that together we're stronger. So yes, it's great to have our own houses and our own spaces, and it's been a wonderful experience. But I've been able to go to the Black House and the Indigenous House and so many other houses. And by the way, being in those spaces has been amazing. But also understood that Blacks and Latinos together are by the way, in New York City and everywhere we are. Formidable together. When she said dangerous, we are formidable together. I have no, you know what I mean? And then when you think about all of our other communities together, what that means. So we understand that. Our programs are amazing. We do a lot of outreach and research and programs that people can participate in. So I just want to say that, acknowledge that we've done a lot of cross panels together. There have been a lot of amazing panels done here at Sundance. With people from different houses participating in panels and movies across. So I do want to acknowledge that that's been the case, yes.
I would say this is beautiful that we can do this right now, but there is so many people that cannot come to Sundance. And also, there are so many people that they don't even have the documents. Me personally, I've been putting myself in independent films because I cannot work with a big company right now until I get my documents. So I will ask, what kind of organization or programs do you guys have for the people that cannot come to Sundance? And through the year, they can connect with other people and try to make something happen. Because, right now we came here and we, get full of motivation, we go back home, but we don't have anything, to connect with other people, the same culture, to create things. And that's the only way that can, really, right now we can do it. Because if we don't do it, nobody's gonna do it for us. Nobody's gonna call you or contact you because they don't know that we exist. We have to push ourselves and put ourselves in the room. But what about those people that cannot do that? That they don't have that opportunity? That they don't have money to pay the school?
One thing that I can add to that is totally agree. I think providing access is extremely important. One thing that we are doing on our side is there's many ways to watch this content in a different place where it is being on. The problem is it's so complex between the different entities to navigate that. So, for instance, it's the first time that Google has this role of Sundance and that representation. And hopefully, in the future, what we're going to be able to do is have that accessibility. So other people in other countries that can come here are able to, for a couple of weeks, watch that content. We are pushing very hard to do that, but I think that gotta come with the whole enchilada. That gotta come with everything that I said before. You need to make a case. You need to understand why we're gonna make this accessible for this XY people in different countries, and then partner like we are doing here. So, but still, it's not gonna be enough. There's gonna be a million things.
I just wanted to add a very short element to that. So I worked at an art house theater for 7 years, and I think that art house theaters across the U.S. are in black and brown communities primarily because they are white flight communities. And so I thought that I left my art house because even though we were an 80% Spanish-speaking community, we rarely, if ever, played anything to that community or asked what that community wanted to see. I'm really curious if I'm in the exhibition field, and I'd really like to know if there are resources or just lines of thought around how to empower curators to do the work of connecting like everything from John Wick to the golden age of Mexican cinema to help an entire community come together in a community hub to talk about how we do all intersect and invite people to learn about their neighbors through a more joyful, like medium, like film, because it seems like it's such an easy way to create solidarity in a community that isn't on the coast, especially. But it always seems to be kind of written out of the context of like streaming, filmmaking, explicitly, and there's a house in every community, and it's made for it. But there's kind of this like, oh well, we just do art house films ethos in these predominantly white institutions, and I feel like it's such an untapped resource for all of us to uplift filmmakers to have these conversations across the U.S. in small communities and large communities, so on and so forth.
I want to also make sure that your question was answered, because I don't know if it fully was. I don't know if there is an answer to it, and I think that part of these dialogues that are important is for us to, it's like the days of the salons where we may never get to the answer, but we start creating community and start crafting ideas. And I can only, I guess, if it helps at all, I can speak on me coming to LA with no type of privilege whatsoever. I know a big part of what I can see that really brought me to where I'm at now is exactly what you're doing. It's putting yourself in the places you do have access to. And I think a lot of it is also just, for me, it was a lot of like, I'm gonna just keep crafting myself as an artist, because being an artist is hard. Like, even if you're like a Nepo baby, like where you're like, whatever, it's so hard. You're putting yourself out there in a world that's constantly telling you, like, what are you doing? Look at you, you're making a fool of yourself and all that stuff. So it's a lot of it is like overcoming those mountains that are not only like aside from like what the world does, but within yourself. And sometimes that's the only thing we have control over, because we don't know the outcomes of anything. You can book what you think is going to be the biggest movie ever, and then it certain things might pull it from being put. So not to name any names, but so you don't know. Like, and I think a big part of what I know has helped me has been the idea that success isn't just the prize. Your greatness isn't once you get the thing. Your greatness, that's the result of the greatness. Your greatness comes in you showing up every day for yourself and for your community. And the more that we're able to craft that together, the more powerful that we are. Right? Did I just say that? And realizing that that's the only thing that we can do. And feeling your heart and licking your wounds when they come, and your community will pick you up. And even what I think was being said is also like advocating for each other, even if it is in your specific struggle, making sure that we know that our struggles are linked. So I don't have an answer to it, but I think that I can say for me that was something that I know has gotten me to even here, and I think places like this help. I know we're so privileged even enough to be here, but and then taking this energy and then bringing it back to our communities, bringing it back to our families, because community is our biggest strength. And that will allow us to really celebrate each other's wins as our own. And we're stronger in that way. So to continue cultivating and doing exactly what you're doing and make yourself so good. Unfortunately, we have to be twice as good a lot of times, but so good that they can't ignore you. And that's something that for me, I can't control any of it, but I can control that, or at least try. So fill your soul, fill your art, let your life be art, and let your life be that.
Thank you so much. Also, I will suggest that you guys that have a little bit more power of anybody that is in here in this room, you can suggest that to create something, even in Zoom calls, even on internet, because it is easy for us that we are in the hustling all the time. But I'm talking more about my community, the ones that cannot come here, the ones that doesn't have the money, or they are not strong enough to come show up. Yeah. So for us, yes, that's the only way that I can do it. Independent films, whatever. I work here, behind camera, in front of camera. So I will suggest for you guys that you have more power in this room that you can suggest, like you guys have the Latinx House, to create something that it can, you know, help the community to learn more about the film industry, learn more how to connect each other and create more.
And I do just want to say, my team is a global team now, and we did just launch, and that's a fairly new team for us. So we have regional leads in all the regions. So I say that LATAM, APAC, EMEA, for those varies around the world. And we do plan to launch programs in those regions, but it's a 1 to 2 year process. I do just want to say that. So. But do stand by, like, that's the intention. I do know that will happen. I cannot answer your question about the local theaters, but it's a really good question. The one that I will take back with me, I promise.
I'll just say that, like, I feel like programming is really important.
By the way, I hear
create context.
I hear that.
Yeah.
I hear that, and I hear the question. By the way, I live in a neighborhood that has an independent theater, and it's been empty and shut down for several years now. So I hear the question, and I can appreciate it. So it's a good question. I'll take it back with me, I promise. And I do, like, we have a partner that's here. One of my partners is here from Free the Work, and they're one of our global partners. So thank you for being here. And they work with Above and Below the Line Talent, and go to their site. Like they champion inclusion and Above and Below the Line Talent, and have run several successful programs as well. So I really do encourage people to utilize the resources that are available to you globally if you are not based in the United States as well.
Before we got another question, I'll take that as an action item personally. First of all, I want to share this talk is being live streamed as we speak, but it's on Facebook. Maybe we can do better. We can put it on YouTube. So I'll take that as an action item personally. Olga and I are talking about how we can elevate the Latinx presence on the YouTube side. So that's something that hopefully next year you'll see. And get like a better approach to those communities.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Lorena Valencia. I'm a Mexican filmmaker, and we have talked about the challenges, and we know that in this industry, being Black, white, Latino, we have a lot of rejection. So, so my question is, what do you guys do every time that you have that rejection? What is your mantra?
What do you do every time
that you have rejection?
Or rejection?
Yeah.
I mean, you already have the no. You just have to look for the yes, right? Like,
and
delusion.
What is your,
I'm like
your
such an
mantra,
advocate of
right?
being delusional in every set. Where you're just like, okay, someone's getting the yes. I don't know. Like, I've also come from, a lot of times I just had very little to lose. It was like, so where I was nowhere to go but up. So I just kind of was like, okay, and I think Nikki kind of said it well too. Or you're just like, I'm gonna go up and talk to that person, and if they think I'm weird, they're probably not wrong, and they should probably not talk to me, and that's okay, because not everything's gonna be a good fit. So I think I don't know, healthy dose of delusional.
I can share in my case, I'm very stubborn. I bounce back. I don't take a no for an answer. I'm Mexican as well, and I in my wildest dream, I would have dreamed to be here and representing and doing the work that I do. And I think that's because I don't take that no for an answer. And I try to understand like why they are saying no. And that's majority of the time is because they are not understanding what we are bringing. And I think it's up to us to get back, get a better approach, and then come back.
Yeah, well, I think at least for me, the road to make a film is full of no's. It's full of rejections, and that's part of the thing. Usually, what I do is try to put the things like in a big scope in terms of understanding that there's so much necessities also in terms of, at least in Chile, I think all the time in terms of the national situation, in terms of education, healthcare, whatever. So sometimes, of course, they give funds to some projects, sometimes not. We are claiming to get more and more funds, but sometimes I also think, well, okay, making a film is also something. It's a privilege also to make a film in a way, to make an artwork and put it there. So I try to be humble also and to understand that you're going to find the people, and the most important thing is not to push too hard when to make the teams. For me, at least, when you make a co-production, when you work with a sales agent, with a manager, or whatever, it's like to make it fit in a more organic way and understand that to make that link happen, a lot of no's and rejection have to occur to make that happen. And I think that's I don't know. For me, at least, I have a lot of reactions, and but we're here, and I think that's part of keeping on and move on, and usually the people are there, and I believe a lot in collective processes, collaborative processes, and when you get the good people together, things happen and things put together. So yeah, that would be, and to cry a lot.
We have another question here.
Hi. I guess just jumping off of that with rejection and things, whenever you do approach these gatekeepers, these people who have the power to open these doors and make these changes, how do you get them to care? How do you get them to listen to you? Because I've been in rooms that are majority white, and I've approached these powerful people and say, hey, why is the room like this? What are we doing to change? And they don't care. They don't want to engage with you. They don't see the value. Everyone here, we care about this, but there are people out here who think that the Latinx House doesn't need to exist. How do we convince them? How do we get them to listen? You said you surround yourself with people who get it, but what about those who don't get it? How do we engage with them?
I spend time educating people. I report to the least multicultural bosses. But I think they get it because we have spent a lot of time helping them understand why we need to invest in certain things. And the reaction is, oh, now I get it. But it takes some time. It's not that everything or everybody's against. I see it as a lack of understanding. And I try to do that. And there's going to be, as he was saying, rejection, and we need to keep pushing. I would love to hear.
I would just say, I don't, when I think about DEI and what I do, I'm passionate about it, absolutely. But realistically, what we do, yes, there's a moral imperative, but also you have to talk to people about what the business imperative is, right? There is an expectation that people see themselves on the screen. That's real. I think the audience demands it. And that's what you have to talk about. That what does the audience want to see, right? They expect to see themselves on screen. That's real. They want to see that. And you have to come, if you're not being able to sell it from the moral, and if you can't sell the moral to them, then you have to sell the business. And by the way, your argument should always include both. I believe that. Because that is the industry that we are in today. We are in an industry where there is a business demand for who we are. That's real. There is an expectation. The audience expects it. And if you don't deliver it, they will tell you that you didn't deliver it, and you'll see it, right? Because they won't go see your movie because you didn't deliver. And I do believe that. And I think that, look, my job is sales. Everyone, you're always selling up, right? As an executive, you're always selling to the boss, to the next boss, to the next. Everyone always has to sell, and that's been my entire career. You're always selling. You might think you don't work in a sales job, but you do. Corporations are sales. That's just how it works. And you have to face the no, but you have to figure out, how do I sell it again? And so I think anyone who tells you that this house shouldn't exist, we have to come in from a different perspective. But there is a way to sell it. Thank you.
Let's take this last one.
Sorry, say, yeah, your question's just as important, I'm sure. But I wanted to ask, first of all, hearing about John Wick and Pedro Pascal in The Last of Us, that makes me so incredibly happy to see us represented in ways that are not stereotypical. Usually we're seen historically as what, like drug dealers, a sexy pool boy, sexy maid, right? And I wanted to know, what can we do as a community to show us in lights that are outside of stereotypes? What can we do together to make sure that that trend keeps going?
I've had to do some really scary things, like turn down work, which is terrifying because my cell phone got shut off the first season of shooting Vida because I couldn't afford to pay it. So it wasn't like I have anything else to rest on, you know, other than the delusion that I talk about. But yeah, I think part of that has been that, or sometimes getting offered roles and knowing that I'm getting paid way less than the majority of the cast, and being like, I'm not gonna take this, and because I'm aware of that, and that feels really scary to do, because it wasn't that long ago that you know, I was pulling things out of the grocery cart to be able to, you know, afford my groceries. So I think part of that is a boldness and a fearlessness that I hope inside, if I'm really honest, I still hope that I'm doing the right thing in doing that. I know that like I was. So it's a boldness in pushing forward and advocating, knowing that it isn't just me advocating for myself, but knowing that if I can do that, then that creates a status quo where they're like, oh shoot, like now other people are turning this down because it's very clear that this person is the lowest paid person. And for what? Because you're like, I know the credits, I know the thing. I think part of it is also just talking to each other. I know a lot of the actors that I've worked with have benefited a lot in us sharing what we're getting paid. And I think we've seen that also with labor unions, where you're just like, we gotta start talking about this stuff. And I know executives don't love that because it is a business, but I know that I've been able to, you know, advocate for myself in a way by being really honest with that stuff. So I think that part of forging forward is a bit of boldness and being able to kind of also understand, like, I know that I work on my craft a lot, that when I'm on a set, I know I bring so much more than even just that value. And I think having confidence in that as well, knowing like, I know when I'm on your set, your product's gonna be so awesome because I give so much. And being like, and you know, Monica Ramirez is a big, you know, part of the Latina Equal Pay Day. Like, we're the lowest paid in so many ways, and if you're not advocating, if you don't have a team that's willing to stand beside you on that, then what are you gonna do? Because it's not just about the money; it's about the way that you're viewed on that set, and then really just getting paid fairly. So you're not asking for anything more than anybody else, you're just actually getting asked for what's fair. So I think part of that is like really leaning into that.
I also think it's about us, and by the way, like, I consider part of my team's job, and it's advocating and educating for great creators and great new creators, and saying like, hey, reminding people, you know, they're great, they write everything. Right? They don't just, I mean, they write, they act, they do everything, and it's not just to play the, you know, ex-lead that is, as you said, the sexy gardener.
I hope I get to be a sexy pool boy now.
But if you want to do
that's
that,
a role
yes.
I get to play.
But I like to, I mean, you brought up Pedro Pascal, but I bring up like Oscar Isaac was in Our 16 of a Marriage, and he is like, you know, like, I think that people that don't know that he is, yes. But like, I like to bring those people up because I think that it's important to remember, and you know, Selma Hayek is in the new Magic Mike, right? Yes. Selma Hayek's in the new Magic Mike movie. But like, I think that's like a big, she's been sexy something in that, okay.
Sexy pool boy.
Sexy, not sexy pool boy, sexy something, yes. But like, I think I bring those up, like, people that are, they should just be allowed to be whatever they want to be, like, not be all the things that every person that's not of color has always been allowed to be. And also to write, if they choose not to write a specifically Latinx story, then that should be great too, right? Like, I think that's fine. I'm going to mention, because I just know the TV off the top of my head, but Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, if you don't know him, he's Nicaraguan. He is writing PLL, which has just got picked up for second season, and Pretty Little Liars, for those that don't know, right? Like, that's not a specific, like, Latinx story. That's just a story that's, like, a dramedy soap, like, been around. But I think that's fine. That's a great story that showcases everyone. And I think we have to just keep reminding people that people can write our people can write everything, do everything, be anything that, you know, we've all want to be, like everybody has been told for forever.
And I just want to give Roberto his flowers really quick. I was also in Riverdale, and quietly, this man, what he does behind the scenes in helping writers and editors get their first directing jobs, and all, like, that's not even a show that's like women of color and like POC, but like the amount of directors I've seen go through that has been really, really powerful and really beautiful. So just want to give
and I bring up he's also LGBTQ, and he's about intersectionality, and I just like, when we talk about communities crossing, I just like to bring that up too. So it's just so important, and
as I said before, I think we couldn't stay here like 3 more hours. We went over like double the time. Unfortunately, we need to wrap it up. We can continue the conversation after here on the floor. But before we do that, please help me with a round of applause for this amazing people.
And thank you guys for sharing space with us, because I think that, you know, it's like we're talking about community, like, and really like holding space together, and for the great questions and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Latinx House, for opening the door.